The information shared on this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. While we discuss topics related to mental health, well-being, and emotional support, we are not providing therapy or medical services. Always seek the advice of your physician, psychologist, psychiatrist, or other qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a mental health condition. If you are in crisis, feeling unsafe, or need immediate support, please contact a mental health professional or emergency services in your area. The views expressed by guests and hosts are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of any affiliated organizations or institutions.
Get inspired, get motivated with Maya Akai and the Maya, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast.
Something that I take pride in is trying to be forward thinking outside the box, challenging myself. And as I challenge myself, hopefully I challenge you.
Find Maya on Twitter and Instagram at Maya_Akai. On Facebook at Maya Akai Presents.
We're going to talk health, wealth, fitness, mental health, financial, lots of different things that can empower you as you seek out the ambition that you're pursuing.
Or get everything Maya at MayaAkai.com.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Maya, My Ambition, Your Ambition, where I like to say my podcast looks to embrace those salient topics related to mental wellness from a fresh and forward-thinking perspective. So if you're a first-time listener or viewer, welcome. But I always say, just buckle up for safety because occasionally it could be an unexpected bumpy ride. You just may have an epiphany that you never thought was going to happen. And of course, if you are a returning listener or viewer, welcome back. I always appreciate your support. You are way familiar with how we do things here. For the next 40, 50 minutes, I'll be honest, today could go a little longer because it's going to be hot. Find that space so that you can relax, listen, and reflect. And I always say, grab a pen and paper so you can jot down some thoughts you might have. And let's do a much needed dive into a current state or lack thereof of men's mental wellness. And boy, this topic is front and center. In fact, if you see in the corner, I do actually have a logo that is from NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness, that really every month they try to promote something salient. If you don't know, June is actually Men's Mental Health Month. Hopefully most people knew that, but there's a high probability that you didn't. Because we can be very honest with ourselves that we really don't approach mental wellness with men the way that we should. And all of us know that struggling with mental health impacts everything about your life. It is the driver, regardless of how people feel about it. It is the thing that helps you to have self-awareness, confidence. It is your ecosystem. And when you're emotionally and mentally imbalanced or feel there are no spaces for you to exist, what exactly do you do? And often this is the experience that many Black men have. So in this edition of the Maya episode podcast, it's the mental matrix, the struggle for men to find spaces to be seen and heard. And my guests are phenomenal. And I was not going to have this conversation alone. And I felt we should go to the source. As you say, if you want the right answer, go to the horse's mouth. So I'm bringing on Joe and Sean are going to discuss with us the things that are unique about the experience for Black men. But before we dive into that, I want you to understand why this conversation is long overdue. Because it has, since the beginning of the arrival of Black people to this country, it has been a very rough road for Black men. I'm going to throw some numbers at you because I always believe unless you know history, you don't know why this conversation is so important when we talk about emotional and mental duress. Slavery started in the United States, chattel slavery, in 1619 and went until 1865 when we hit segregation. Wrap your mind around what I just said. For 200, think about this, in 45 years, Black men were under slavery, as well as Black women. But we're talking about Black men here, so I'm not really having a conversation in women in this respect. So for 245 years, emotional and mental, physical, financial, you name it, spiritual duress. Then from 1865 to 1964, we go into segregation. 89 years of additional segregation, but it was a very slippery slope because for Black men, during segregation and Jim Crow, if Black men could not find jobs, which was highly likely the situation, they could be incarcerated. Once again, removing them from their families and having the opportunity to provide, have autonomy, be people. We also know that the start of that is a pipeline to the prison system, mass incarcerations. So we're talking about from now back to that point, 335 years of emotional and mental subjugation with never a space to exist. This is why I said I needed you to wrap your mind around this conversation being very salient. There are some numbers I want you to understand that eventually time catches up with you. We have come to know that suicide is the second leading cause of death for Black men between the ages of 15 to 34. And this is according to studies that the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, has done. We also know that suicide is prevalent among Black men, and the rate is 4 times that higher than their female Black counterparts. Furthermore, the rabbit hole goes deeper, and the American Academy of Children and Adult Adolescent Psychiatry has seen a 60% rise in suicide rates among Black boys over the past decades. So if you wonder why we have to streamline and bring our conversations into line about the duress that Black men experience, if these numbers and this history that I have not shared with you does not make you understand why, I guarantee you by the end of this podcast, you will. So without further ado, you've heard me flap my gums enough. Let's bring on my guests. First guest coming on. They're coming on at the same time. We have on Joe Blue, who is a licensed mental health counselor, onto the show to discuss. Obviously, he understands this plight, one, as being a Black man, but two, as being a therapist. And he went as far to see the need by creating Black men embracing their feelings. And our second guest here is Sean Garvey, who is a mental health advocate who has created the mental space and does weekly programming about how therapy ain't no joke, so that men can understand that you need a space to be able to place your burden, because you shouldn't have to travel that journey alone. Fellas, welcome to the Maya, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to be
All
on.
right. So I dropped a lot of information because I believe people need to have a backdrop to how serious and how grave this problem really is. And as much as people will often say, why do you have to go back to slavery? I hope when I framed the duration and the impact of when you are in an institutionalized system for that long, how it does impact your overall emotional and mental and social well-being and development. So with this being said, Joe, first of all, it is hard to come across a Black male therapist. Many people seek them out. They can't find them. So what made you choose this path? Because I don't think this is where you started your journey.
No, it's not where I started. So I started off actually within the corporate America space, but going into before I got even there, I started off studying psychology freshman year of college. But to just be truthful about it, I'm not going to make as much money coming out of college with a psychology degree, so I switched to business and just to try it out, right? So I was in that career field for about 12 years, and just being in that space as a Black man, I really encountered a lot of racism, a lot of tension, and also just identity conflict of am I in this space, a lot of imposter syndrome, things of that nature. So experiencing anxiety attacks, panic attacks, just the stress of corporate America, the stress of, coming in at 7, 8 o'clock and then leaving at 7, 8 o'clock, and just trying to, figure life out. I really started to experience even more with a larger scale, just my own personal mental health battles. And then that's what sparked me going back to essentially my first love, which was understanding people. Once I started therapy, at that young age. It was about 22, 23. Once I started therapy and really like diving into what I was actually feeling, because I was feeling it, but I couldn't put the words to it. And it started to click and it started to make sense. So I wanted to go back to my first love, understanding the importance of having the language, of having the tools and the concepts to be able to speak to. And that gives that, because there's power in words, there's power in knowledge, there's power in education. That's one of the things Frederick Douglass mentioned once he understood how to read, how much more power he had. And that's why they took that away from us. So that really sparked me going back. It's not only to give back to my community, but also to help me understanding just the challenges that we face within our communities of just mental health. So that's what really caused me to go back and just be in this field.
Okay. And I always say every therapist has a journey that has led them to this point. But I think it's interesting often when men choose to be therapists or psychiatrists, often they're more
Mhm.
they're usually more psychiatrists than they are psychologists or even therapists. So I feel
Mhm.
that when a man decides to dive into this field and do the work, it's a very powerful thing. Now, Sean, on the flip side, you're kind of a different narrative. You're more of a mental health advocate. You see the value in mental health in your journey. Tell my listeners more about how Sean Garvey arrived at the point of realizing that therapy ain't no joke and more people need to know about it.
Yeah, sure. So I worked in the radio broadcasting industry, and I still do for 23 going on 24 years. And in 2020, there were a lot of things that I experienced and witnessed during the year of COVID. I lost a couple of people, and that was the same year where I was in a romantic relationship with my then girlfriend at the time, who broke up with me during the same year as the pandemic, and the same year that I lost my grandmother and a friend of mine to cancer. And I was in a dark place for a quite some time during those years coming out of COVID, to where I had to go see 6 to 7 therapists at a time. And I even had thoughts of wanting to take myself out, to feeling like I felt hopeless during those years coming out of a relationship with someone that I thought I was going to marry one day. And I remember back in 2023, or 2022, rather, 2022, 2023, when I was working at News and Talk 1380 WLK, which is the sister station to B103 here in Atlanta under the Odyssey parent company. I was a board operator and a producer for so many shows that were more so political talk based. And I felt like something was missing at this radio station, to where I pitched the idea to the brand manager at the time. And we had a conversation. I told her, well, hey, we need to do a show called The Mental Space. I'm the one that actually came up with the name, The Mental Space, and talk about things that are related to mental health in our community. And without any hesitation, the brand manager and my boss at the time, she said, let's do it. Let's go for it, because this is a show that we need to have in our community to talk about all things mental health, and talk about the importance of therapy, and also talk about the issues and the problems that we face every day as minority people. So we were able to greenlight the show, and the show became a huge success. I was actually on the show as a host during the evening slot. And I brought in so many people from different backgrounds, from people in the community leaders, politicians, even public figures called in or came into the studio to talk about their own mental health journey, and how it became so relatable to the listeners that tuned in every Monday or Wednesday night to get advice, to get information, and to hear candid conversations about different things in the community as it ties into mental health. So I was able to accomplish that while still dealing with my own mental issues. And it worked out perfectly around that time. And I'm glad to know that I was able to make an impact. And I still do to this very day. Fast forward to The Offspring, which is now called Therapy Ain't No Joke, that I sometimes share the show with Rasta, who is who works in the mental health field. And I was able to just carry that show on to more of an online platform, and still be able to impact those in the journey of mental health.
So when we talk about mental health, obviously, no, there are so many stigmas. But let me ask you this question from a male standpoint. Obviously, women are totally feelings, embrace them, have them, put them everywhere. It's as children, women are absolutely told it's okay to feel, to exist, to be weak, to be vulnerable. An entirely different narrative for men. Little boys are
Mhm.
told there's no crying in baseball. Suck it up.
Mhm.
You can't
Mhm.
show feelings. So why is it that, okay, Sean, you said something in our pre-show conversation that I think needs to be distinguished, because we could talk forever, but there's a distinct difference for black men and white men when it comes to mental health. And by the way, I'm not trying to make this a racial conversation.
Mhm.
One, am I misplaced in saying that? Let me just start with that.
To misplace in regards to making it a black or white conversation?
Yes.
Absolutely not. It's the reality of which we live in. We all live. We have different experiences. So it's hard to connect with someone if we don't understand their context and their background, right? Yes, we want to say that we don't see race, but that's not true. It sounds cute, but that's not true. But we want to see the whole person in totality, and that includes their race. So if we exclude that, we're excluding a huge piece of them because their race was a pivotal part of their upbringing, of their lens, of their perspective. So to make it a black or white, we're not making it. It's already that way. We're just acknowledging what's there, essentially.
Okay. Sean, would you agree with that? That it really, there is no way to potentially separate it out because, I mean, to not separate it out because the experience themselves relatively dictate that you have to.
Yeah, and I can only speak from a mental, not only a mental health standpoint, but from a media standpoint because of my years in broadcasting. And even as a kid growing up watching different shows and different sitcoms, there were a lot of positive Black family sitcoms that came out of the 80s and the 90s that a lot of us looked up to or seen a different side of what Black family life looks like. But there were also movies such as Roots, which was
Hmm.
more a miniseries. And also years and years later, you look at slavery movies and how that
Hmm.
affected the psyche of a Black man
Hmm.
like myself to where I'm like, and I can only speak for me, I could be watching a miniseries like Roots or watching 12 Years a Slave and all these slavery-based films and feel some type of way about the other side of
Hmm.
people and having that anger and that animosity build up in you because you watching your ancestry being destroyed and being attacked and being killed mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, all of
Hmm.
the above. And then it make you feel some type of way as a Black man thinking that, oh, well, I'm only going to be marginalized to just being this kind of Black man because of how society sees us as a Black man. But at the same time, from the media, going back to the media, growing up, even though I've seen positive images of Black men in sitcoms and in some movies, the negativity, the negative portrayal of the Black man has also been highlighted so much in television and in film. And even though it came with some form of intention to bring some awareness, bring some messaging of what was happening in the inner cities and the inner circles of America, you still feel like, from a viewer standpoint, especially as a Black male viewer standpoint, you still look at it as they must see us as just gang bangers. They must see us as
Hmm.
pimps. They must see us as drug dealers, as Black men that beat their wives and their girlfriends and stuff. And it does something to your psyche to where you feel like I'm less than anything else other than my other counterparts outside of my race, outside of community. So it does take a toll on your mental health, even for me as a kid
Hmm.
growing up, watching these images on TV and on the film, and even in the music, by the way, too.
Hmm.
And I'm glad you pointed out because one of the reasons I chose to term this particular episode the mental matrix is because the idea most people became, I guess, introduced to the word the matrix with the movie The Matrix. But what it ultimately was, that term that they used was about societal conditioning. That's really what the matrix, so they made it obviously very digital in its existence. But
Hmm.
what a matrix ultimately is, when you look at it from a societal standpoint, it's when very rigid systems or even norms have been put into place that people follow, even if it's not something that is good for them or even allows them to have authenticity. So when people have that realization that this reality that you have created is not a reality that is actually reflective of me as a person, hence it
Hmm.
becomes a matrix. So there's a lot of different narratives that are going on right there that I want to throw at you guys, because one of the things that I had said to Sean when we were doing our pre-show, because he got a little here earlier, and I said,
Hmm.
there is no technical, like there is feminism, right? And we know why feminism exists. But
Right.
even within the scope of feminism, Black women came to understand that feminists could not actually embrace or even begin to represent their experience. Because what Black feminism ultimately says is, I understand I am seen from a racial lens first before I am seen as a gender lens. But yet with
Hmm.
men, there is no ideology that exactly kind of brings you guys in line that way. But Black women did separate themselves out. And the question always came from other feminists: I don't understand why you feel the need to separate out. And it's kind of that ain't I a woman conversation, which, if you didn't know
Hmm.
about that, hence you thought that this unified idea is there. So let's talk about a couple things that are surfacing. And I want you to give me your input. So the manosphere, right? And it was something that I had never heard of before in its term. Once I read what it was, I understood it. And they're saying that the manosphere exists pretty much, it's not something that's centralized. It's not, I guess you could say it's turning into a movement. It's more in online communities, and influencers have created these spaces for men specifically. Where initially the conversation was about like finances, maybe dating, fitness, to give information. And a lot of younger men were attracted to it. But now they're saying there's a shift and it's turning into more of a male ideology type movement where male supremacy is being something that is being reintroduced and misogyny is becoming very front and center. One, have you heard about this? What are your thoughts about this? And this is something even aligns with the Black man experience. Whoever wants to go first.
Mhm. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, so just to add another layer to the manosphere, I didn't know anything about the manosphere until 2020. All things go
Mhm.
back to 2020 because in the year of COVID, you had so many podcasters, both men and women, that started creating their own content. And the manosphere actually came from the area where Black men felt like back then in the 80s and the 90s, where you had, of course, people like Oprah Winfrey and even talk show hosts that were more so catering to women audiences. Black men in America felt that they didn't have a safe space or a place to vocalize what they've been witnessing, what they've been experiencing in personal relationships, or just even from a professional standpoint. And now that the internet is still here and is popular more and more, and with COVID, people being sheltered at place, it gave Black men an opportunity to vocalize these things on a major platform. And when people think of the manosphere, who they think of the first? They think of Kevin Samuels, and then they
Mhm.
think of all the other Black male podcasters that came after, either came before
Mhm.
or after Kevin Samuels. It's just that Kevin Samuels became more popular, right? Popular and polarizing. That's the word I'm looking for.
Mhm.
Polarizing more than all the other people that spawned from Kevin Samuels, but it just gave Black men a purpose. It gave them an opportunity to vocalize these things on the internet. I just think that, because at the end of the day, it's all freedom of speech. You can say what you want, but there are going to be some consequences and things and some repercussions that come behind that. And I think it gotten a bit out of control to where no solutions are not coming out of this. It's just
Mhm.
ranting and giving opinions and giving perspectives on how us as men are feeling nowadays. And I had to watch myself as a radio broadcaster and a podcaster because I could easily get caught up in that, just taking my personal experiences from dealing with women that I have relationships with or that I am going out on dates with, and using the platform to release all the stuff that I have been through, and telling my audiences, whether they are all male, whether they are female, or 50-50, and saying, hey,
Mhm.
this is what it is. This is what it
Mhm.
is. Take it for what it is. And it caused that division. Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
saying something as Joe,
Yeah.
I have you jump into this, but here's a little nugget I want people to pick up that Sean just dropped. Everybody who has an opinion on the internet or on social media, it's an opinion. It doesn't make it a fact, and nor does it mean that what they're saying or their experience can apply to you. We often refer to this often as trauma bonding.
Mhm.
When people
Mhm.
think because they have a similar experience, they think it's a shared experience, and then so they start identifying with things that maybe isn't correct. So, Joe, what's your thoughts on the manosphere?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it leans into that toxic masculinity that's currently trending as well, and where that led to, right? Where you have Kevin Samuels speaking in the way that he's speaking, and then it also leads to the absolutes that exist in this space when we talk about all men are this, all women are this, or all women are that, and placing each other in various categories. And the mental health aspect comes into play is where we're all hurt, we've all had experiences. We all have hurts. We all have had moments where we were overlooked. And men as well, we often feel invisible. So when it comes down to, and Maya opened up with this as well, it's women are conditioned to be more comfortable in their vulnerability, in their feelings. And there's not much space for men to also be vulnerable and a safe space, especially to be vulnerable and also to say, hey, this hurt me. Because what we experience, or what most men I would say experience, is that, say, if we're in a dating relationship and my partner mentions, she's feeling this way. And then it's like, I'm feeling this way too. I didn't like when you did that. Well, now that blows into, now she feels some type of way. Now I have to console her, right? To where my feelings are no longer valid, have a space to exist. So men in that manosphere environment took the opportunity to vocalize. Well, this is what we experience as well. This is where we can have our footing. This is where we can speak up for ourselves and have that sense of dominance. But then that gets carried away where it's as if it is a man's world and what we say goes. And, we start to belittle or lessen to where we're high value. We don't need a woman, right? A woman is just an object in a sense. And that's where we have to get to those projections and those hurts to where it's like, hey, we're all hurting, right? A relationship is not supposed to be, which one is the prize. We're both a prize, right? Now, how do we cherish each other? How do we value each other? But in order to do that, we have to understand where this partner may have hurt us in the past doesn't mean that this one will. So how do we have the language to be able to speak to and express what I like and what I don't like? We all have different expectations, but are the expectations even coming from a healthy environment? Right? We may have an expectation of a woman is supposed to be in the kitchen, supposed to do this, but this is coming from what we may have seen or what we may have heard. Right? Is that healthy or not? It's based upon perspective and what works for you. That may not work for everybody else. Right? But when we place these expectations on other people, and when they're not matching that or fitting into that, then it's a problem with them, not necessarily. Right? If I don't know how to change a tire, doesn't mean I'm less of a man. It's I was never in a situation to where I had to change a tire, right? Or nobody actually taught me how to change a tire. We leaned into AAA and things like that, but doesn't make me less of a man. But a woman's expectation is I'm supposed to do this. And
Yep.
where we're talking in supposed tos or you shoulds, we dismiss the person that's in front of us. And now we're carrying societal expectations and gender roles into play. And then we're, going back and forth on that, but we're not seeing each other, right? It's important that we see each other and that we have a safe space. And that's where I believe men, especially now, can is trying to advocate for. How do we have a safe space to even say, I don't know? And that's what we fear because we're conditioned and expected to have all the answers, to have a plan. But men can't say, I don't know without it being, well, why don't you know? What type of man are you? You should know. You should have it all together. You should have this bank account. You should be able to do this. And again, it's a lot of shoulds, right? To where we can't
Yeah.
show up vulnerably. Because if I
That
do,
yeah.
yeah.
That's actually, I mean, and I do agree with what you just said, that that expectation that, because we live in a society where generalizations are huge. People like to
Mhm.
think that everything in this world is homogenous, and it's not. Everything is not black and white. We probably live in way more gray spaces than we ever want to acknowledge. And
Mhm.
Sean, you said something. I was not a fan of Kevin Samuels at all. Um, and now that you say it, he was probably a first intro into the manosphere for black men. I didn't even think of him that way. His he didn't even pop in my head as somebody who was kind of talking about a lot of the things where the shift has happened from, oh, let's talk finance and fitness, to now it's kind of turning into misogyny a lot, about where we need to get back to more traditional roles, or what Kevin Samuels would talk about the few times that I could bear to watch him, because he never had a guest on his show that I felt showed up good for women. That was the first thing. I was like, how about you go toe to toe with a woman who really can match what you're saying, and let's have a real conversation. I kind of felt like he chose people who clearly could not represent themselves. And I didn't think that was fair to black women, but nor did I think it was fair to black men. I also felt like it created a greater dissension between black
Mhm.
men and black women, which is, there's a big rift. Okay, let me just ask you a question.
Unfortunately.
I could be in my feelings about this. I feel that emotionally, mentally, socially, financially, spiritually, the whole nine yards. I feel that black men and black women have a huge rift between them.
It's we do, but even looking we do. Social media would definitely paint that. But statistically, there's a lot of marriages that exist between
Mhm.
black men and black women. There are healthy relationships that exist, right? But social media will make it seem as if we're at odds with each other,
Yes.
right? And that a black man can't have a healthy relationship with a black woman. He has to go outside of the race to do that. And that puts each, like, if you want to date outside your race because it's your choice, right? But
Mhm.
don't put another race down to validate your decision. Until you date every black man that exists in this world, you can't say all black men are this, right? Until
Yes.
you date all black women in this world, you can't say, well, well, black women will always do that. That's not fair. If you want to do it because it's your choice and you're willing to step outside of expectations or norms of what you're supposed to do because you are interested in what else is out there. Make it your choice and be okay with that and understanding what may come with it, but do it because you want to. But there is that gap, unfortunately. And again, this is where it comes to. If we have that safe space to talk, it's like the world is beating you up in this way, right? Black man and black woman. Let's not do it to each other. So let's have that space and opportunity to say, hey, I hear what you're going through. I hear what you're saying, but see me and see what I'm trying to do here and vice versa. Because we don't have to be at war with each other. It now becomes a psychological condition. And that also goes back to slavery and how we were conditioned within the States and how the Black home was strategically torn apart to where we can't have this sense of healthiness, which I'm sure I can go into a whole nother topic. But unfortunately, yes, right now, there's a perception as if black women and black men cannot have healthy relationships, and that's not true.
I agree. And oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I got to come behind Joe. I got to come behind Joe
Mhm,
because he said some things that I want to respond to. So,
mhm,
okay. So, number one, with the manosphere, okay, we got to keep in mind that the people that came on Kevin Samuels, and by the way, just as a disclaimer, I'm not in any shape or form defending Kevin Samuels, but nor I'm not a subscriber of his content.
right. Mhm,
However, to play a little bit of devil's advocate, the people that Kevin brought on to his show, they chose because Joe said something that was very key: choice. The people that came on his show, which majority were women, they chose to go on his show. Kevin didn't force the people to come on his show. They chose to come on the platform. And by the way, when Kevin started his platform, he was more so talking to men. But even at that time, when he was talking to men, a lot of people didn't watch his program. He may have only gotten 20 viewers, 10 viewers. And of course, when you starting out doing a podcast, you're gonna get that many likes, you're gonna get that many viewers when you're starting out. But as soon as he started talking about the women, especially black women, and talking about this particular woman that came on, and he said that you weigh more than a linebacker, you weigh more than a football player, that's when it hit a nerve to the YouTube universe and say, oh, wait a minute, he said this, I got to listen to his podcast. Like, he got that whole Howard Stern effect. If you remember the
mhm,
movie Private Parts with Howard Stern,
Mhm.
towards the end of the movie, the guy that helped did the rating system for Howard Stern, basically he was saying to the other person that worked in radio, a lot of people tune into his show because he has that love to hate speech, meaning that people tune into his program because they don't like what he's saying, but they want to see what he's going to say next. And that's the
mhm,
same thing with Kevin Samuels and other people, which we call them as shot jocks in radio broadcasting, where
mhm,
people are saying things that they know is going to hit a nerve with a lot of viewers and a lot of listening audiences, but they tune in anyway to hear
mhm.
what they're going to say to either validate what they're
Yeah.
witnessing, what they're experiencing in their life, or to have those water cooler conversations at work, or to use it as a way to weaponize a particular community or a particular group based on what this person has said. We got to remember that as Black people throughout history, we've always looked up to a leader whenever he says or says something that we either want to hear or we need to hear in order to bring forth change. We can go all the way back to Martin Luther King Jr., to Malcolm X, to all of the leaders, even the Honorable Minister Elijah Muhammad or Minister Louis Farrakhan. We've
Mhm,
Mhm.
always looked up to a person who has said things that we know is going to hit a nerve, but we felt in that moment, okay, we need to hear this in order to bring forth change. Did Kevin and many others bring forth change? Maybe, maybe not. But it sparked up conversations
Right.
after conversations after conversations that got us to where we are at today. Now, I want to say something else too before I go back to Maya. Something that you said about not bringing down a particular race, Joe. What I recently did, and I told Maya this offline, what I recently did, and I talked about this on my morning show this morning. I recently posted a post on my Facebook page saying that I think I want to stop dating Black women in Atlanta, which I am based out of. And there were people that were in my comment section that were giving me the business, but at the same time, they knew me personally because it came from a place of curiosity. Why would Sean Garvey say that? And so on multiple platforms, whether it was the Beat Break Morning Show or on the remix on 89.3 FM here in Atlanta, I basically had to explain and clarify what I meant behind that. And it was coming from a place of where for the past 6 years after my relationship ended with my then girlfriend at the time, I would go on all these different dates in Atlanta and they always had a story. Or they come with me with unrealistic expectations as far as what they want out of a significant other. And I was also saying that I did date multiple women, not at the same time, but just at a time in different states. And I just felt more connected with people from outside of Georgia than I did here in Atlanta because of multiple reasons here in Atlanta. For one, and this is just from my personal observation from lived experience. On top of women having a story, because at the end of the day, everybody has a story. Everybody has a past. People are coming into the dating scene unhealed, broken. They haven't gotten over their ex. That's one. Number two, unrealistic expectations. You're trying to tell me that I should take you to the Cheesecake Factory on the first date. And then number three, as you all know, Atlanta is full of distractions and temptations and situationships. So when I started breaking all those stuff down from what I observed in the city of Atlanta, I think people started to understand a little bit. But the people who did not understand what I was saying, they were either in relationships already, married, and they don't know what the dating scene is like here in Atlanta. And it can go both ways as well, too. I've heard plenty of Black women say, "Oh, I'm so sick and tired of Black men in Atlanta." And when I hear that, I don't react to it in the way that some folks would or what a lot of folks would. I would come in with the level of understanding and be like, oh, what made her say that? Because I'm a Black man myself. I don't make a whole lot of money. I'm not making no six figures. I'm not 6'2" and this and that and the other. But what made you say that? Because what I hear from a lot of Black women is, I can't find a good man. Okay, what is your definition of a good man?
And it's that part right there. It's that part right there. And this applies to men and women both. When it's all said and done, first of all, if somebody says, I don't want to date Black women in Illinois or Chicago, okay, you live here, that's your business. Clearly, you've arrived to that conclusion based on your experience, which I have no right to judge. But for some reason, we think everything about people's lives is supposed to be in the court of public opinion. Like everyone, like you're supposed to care what people think about what you do. No. And that's what people need to be okay with. You make a decision based on your experience and you move forward. That's not a scathing indictment of every person in Illinois. It's not. It just means that you've run your course here and you want something different. And people need to learn how to be okay with those things. But that, again, it's a lot about the societal expectations that are put out there that people don't do well with. And I'm going to say this, Kevin Samuels to me was more about sensationalizing things. Because I'll be honest, I'm sure, Joe, you can probably get this. Sean, you probably get this. When you're speaking from a point that's clear and concise and logical, you're least interesting to people. But when you start talking out the side of your neck and saying wrong stuff, everybody wants to listen to you. But when you're logical, there's nothing attractive about logic. And when you're talking about mental spaces and logic, like right now, this is an important conversation. It's not going to go, but I bet you if we dive real deep into bashing, I bet you it'll get all the likes that you possibly can find because we're being negative. And that's part of the problem. So the manosphere is one thing. It's interesting. There's a thought the misogyny is creeping from it. And it's interesting, but it is what it is. So let me ask you about the things that keep, and I think you both hit on this, the things that keep men really kind of away from therapy. And there are some, I would say, some mental health myths that are out there
Mm-hmm.
that I think a lot of people pick up on. Like, for instance, the mental health myth that depression means you're weak. It's
Mm-hmm.
weakness. True? False? Maybe.
Absolutely false. No, maybe. For me, it's absolutely false. Um, Depression is not a weakness. It's a condition. It's a response to what we're experiencing. Right. It's a reality. That doesn't necessarily have to be permanent. Right. It's these stressors, these conditions, these circumstances that we're experiencing are contributing to how we're feeling and how we're responding, right, to what's going on. It doesn't mean that we're not man enough, doesn't mean that we're not capable, anything like that. It's just recognizing that in these moments, right, we are susceptible to these feelings, to these thoughts, right? But with the proper tools, with the proper help and the proper support, we can overcome. But depression is not a weakness, it's just our response to what we're feeling and what's happening. It's not an identity either. And I think that's where a lot of us get caught up is like, I'm not depressed because that's not who I am, right? That's not my identity, right? I can't be depressed, right? That's impossible. I'm this title, I'm this type of man. Um, this can't happen to me, right? I don't believe it. I'm not even going to say that word. I'm not even going to say depression. It doesn't exist. Just man up, do what you have to do, et cetera, et cetera. But you can be a functional depressed person, right? If you don't want to acknowledge it, right, that's one thing. That doesn't mean that it's not happening, right? And we can say I'm good, right? To we pass away, right? We can say I'm good, and that bottle becomes, right, the best relationship, the most consistent relationship, the most dependable thing, that vice that we leaned into, because we're not acknowledging what we're actually feeling, right? We're self soothing in so many other ways because we're not being honest with what we're experiencing and where we're currently at, right? Not who our identity is necessarily, but just where we are right now. And if we keep lying to that man in the mirror of where we are right now, then we're going to succumb to these things, right? It's going to hit us harder to where it's too late, or we're deep in it and it's even harder to get out of it. So depression is not a weakness. It's a conditional, it's a condition, it's a response to what we're experiencing. There's severity, there's levels to it, of course, whether it's severe, whether it's moderate, and whatnot. And again, that can be worked
Mhm.
through, talked through. But I think for men, it's just recognizing that there is more strength and vulnerability than it is weaknesses. It's a lot more strength in saying, "Hey, I need help," right, and exposing ourselves to that. Um, because a closed mouth doesn't get fed, right? Nobody's going to read your mind and just say like, "Hey, I just had this feeling that you were thinking about these things," right? So I just came out of nowhere. That'd be nice, right? I do believe in miracles and blessings and good people, right? But on average, it's not going to happen that way. We have to open our mouths and say that, "Hey, something's, I'm not broken, but something's not right."
Something's
Right.
not right.
And that's it. It's not even that it's an extreme. It's just something is not right. And I always use this analogy of just like as much as we would like to, um, you know, put a lot of status in our cars and our vehicles, things of that nature, we have to get gas every once in a while. Right.
Uh,
It's just
Probably.
like that.
Yes, it is. And you said something, and Sean, before you answer, that I think people need to acknowledge because it's important, is there's a lot of things, societal things that have been dropped subconsciously in your brain, like man up. That's what people say to people by trying to indicate that you need to suck this up and just move on. It doesn't matter if it hurts. It doesn't matter if it makes no sense, if it's painful,
Hmm.
just do it. Versus the flip side is they'll say things about women like, don't run like a girl, as if there's a deficit to that.
Hmm.
So right there, society is constantly signaling things to men about how you are supposed to behave and how you're
Hmm.
supposed to think, because this is what a
Hmm.
man is. So,
Hmm.
Sean, what's your response to the idea of, oh, depression, it's a weakness? How could you possibly attempt to be addressing that?
I
Oh, he froze. Okay, so I'm sure he's going to roll back through. We'll wait. We'll,
Yeah.
we'll wait. We'll
There
wait
he
for
is.
him.
There he is.
There he is.
We got
All
him.
right, you froze
all
for a little
right.
bit, so we didn't hear what you said about depression equals weakness.
Okay, yeah, sure. I was saying I agree with Joe. I don't consider it as a weakness myself. I consider it as something that one is going through at the moment when they're when he or she or they is not getting what they want in that moment. Like for example, and it goes all the way to childhood to adulthood. If I'm out of a job and I go without a job for weeks and weeks and weeks turn into months into a year, I'm going to be depressed. I'm going to be depressed because I don't have no income coming in. If what I just said earlier about my last relationship with my then girlfriend breaking up with me, I was in a state of depression. I was in a dark place. But that doesn't show signs of weakness. Even losing somebody, like I said, I lost two people during COVID, and then after COVID, I lost a couple of people. So I was in a state of depression myself. So things that happen that can be beyond our control is not a form of weakness. It's just something that you're feeling because it's something that you don't want to let go, or because you're not getting what you want to get in that moment. You're going to be in a
Hmm.
state of depression. And like I said, it goes all the way to kids and to as a child, like for myself, and I'm going by lived experience. I didn't know I was in a state of depression until I look back at my childhood in my adult mind. And it's like, oh, I was in a state of depression because this person made me feel some type of way, or I got into a fight that I lost, and I was in a state of depression because I did not win or I didn't gain anything from that situation in that moment. And also, when we talk about childhood trauma, you
Mhm.
don't know that you witness or you experience some form of trauma until years and years later into your
Hmm.
adulthood. And then you look back and you're just like, wow, that happened to me. Why did that happen? And all these questions come into your mind like, why did that happen to me? Was it something that I did? You know,
Hmm.
and those type of things just become triggering to you later on in life because you try your best as a man to do what you need to do and to walk cautiously so that you won't make the same mistakes as you did or as you went through as a kid. We have to fight every day, just as a black man. We have to fight every day in order to stay alive, in order to survive, in order to take care of our community, take care of our family, and just surviving. Really, I mean, even the recent events, even historically. But
Mhm.
let's talk about recent events of unarmed black men getting shot and killed by police. That can even put you in a state of depression yourself as a black man, and you didn't have anything to do with that situation. You're depressed because you walk out of that door every day, and
Mhm.
from what you
That could have
saw
been you.
with George, what you saw from George Floyd to Trayvon Martin to all of the black men in America that have got shot and killed either by law enforcement or
Rodney King,
someone
the
that's
list.
non-law enforcement. You come out of that door every day and you thinking that same thing could happen to me as a
Hmm.
black man.
And that right there is something that I think people don't consider about the Black experience in this country is the violence that occurs. And yet, you know what the narrative that you hear is? Well, now it's being told that we need to train our young people how to interact with law enforcement. Think about what that's being said. I have to
Hmm.
teach you how to interact with law enforcement. So you, and that doesn't, that by the way, that doesn't mean that everybody in law enforcement is a bad police officer. That does not mean that at all. Because people like to do that. They like to
Hmm.
dichotomize things. Every
Hmm.
police officer is not a bad person, but there's some bad apples in the group. Let's just admit it. There is. But the fact that we're now saying to young men and young boys, we need to train you how to interact with law enforcement so that this doesn't turn into a situation that's bad. Imagine that psyche that each time when you walk out your door, you have to think that something negative could happen to you only because of the color of your skin. That's it. So that myth about talking
Yeah.
about this depression, or even not
Yeah.
even just depression, let's take it bigger. Talking about the experience or the concerns, or here's a bigger word, fear. It won't
Hmm.
help. You just got to deal with it.
And I'm going into that. I wanted to go off of what you just mentioned, right? Like being that we have to constantly adjust, constantly maneuver, then it leads to that question: How do I now show up? I have all of these masks that I'm wearing, right? These things to keep in mind. All right, when I talk to police, I have to be this way. When I go into work, I have to be this way. When I talk to these individuals, I have to be this way. I have so many things to consider and keep in mind that it is exhausting to exist, to breathe, to engage with other people. So I'm depressed, I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed out, I'm fatigued. I don't have motivation to engage with people because of the various masks, titles, hats that I have to wear. I don't even know who I am anymore. Right? I'm morphing into so many things, being everything to everybody to not be a problem. W.E. Du Bois said in his double consciousness, how does it feel to be a problem in America? Right? To have this mask on, right? To be a black man, to engage with our white counterparts in this way, and also to know that at the end of the day, you're still a black man, right? That nothing that you do will put you in these good graces, right? You'll be liked for what you do, and therefore we start to perform, right? We perform out of survival. We perform
Would you
because it's safe.
would
Hmm.
you also say in saying that mass piece that in some respects that you when you say you don't know who you are because you're so busy trying to placate, appease
Hmm.
people, present as a non-threatening individual because to be honest, as a black man, just being a black man can be a threat.
Hmm.
That's it. That's all you did.
Off the strength.
Just off the street. You just showed up. That's it. Because the color of your
Hmm.
skin, you are now looked
Hmm.
at as a potential threat, and you've done
Hmm.
nothing wrong. And I
Hmm.
find I've heard a lot of black men, and when I've worked with black men in therapy, and especially when they get into corporate circles and things like that, and outside of the
Absolutely.
respective black community, many of them
Hmm.
have said, I got so deep into trying to be accepted and liked,
Hmm.
I don't even know who I am anymore. I
Yeah.
I'm just disconnected because I've worked
Yeah.
so hard to wanna be a good example and to be liked and to not be stereotyped that I
Hmm.
stopped even embracing my interests and my authenticity because I
Hmm.
thought if I pushed away from being too black, which whatever that
Hmm.
means, then people
Right.
would accept me more, only to find out it really didn't matter at
Hmm.
all
Hmm.
what I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's exhausting, right? We're tired. We're tired because of what we have to go through just to show up, right? And then get called out for what's missing. That's tiresome. It's exhausting. And then get the sense of perform. We perform, 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 right? And it's not, and we don't know how to just show up because when we show up, it feels like we're being exposed, right? It feels like now we're open to all the criticism, the attacks of what you're not, because I didn't show up in this way that you enjoyed me,
Mhm,
right? And so I can't speak freely. I can't, and this is a very small example. I can't say to, my partner, she would have asked me, it's like, hey, do you want to go to this place with me? And I'm like, no. Then why did you come? Because I do want to be here. But why did you say no? I'm just being honest, right? You asked me how I feel. You asked for my thoughts. I'm just being honest. But I clearly I can't be honest, right? So now I have to put on this face and be like, oh, I love this. This is great. And say, no, I don't want to go, but I still go. Well, if you don't want to be with me, then you know what I mean? So it's just like, all right, so we gotta again perform, right? And this is where it lead into this the myth that you have here about the talking about depression won't help. Depression isolates,
mhm,
right? Again, just staying in line with going and performing. We perform, but we're still not there, right? We're connecting with you. We're physically there, but mentally and emotionally, we're not present. We're isolated. And then after all of that is said and done, we physically isolate, right? So one thing that talking about depression does is that it brings community. It brings somebody else into your space to just understand you and just hear you out. And again, therapy, well, most importantly, therapy is not a place to fix, right?
no,
We're not in a fixing business.
we're not.
Right.
But what this does, it provides that space for
Mhm,
you to one, just open up, express yourself with no judgment, right?
mhm,
No criticisms, and
mhm,
helping you identify yourself, get back in touch with yourself, your feelings, your emotions, and just say what you want to say and what you need to say, but you feel like you can't in these other spaces. So talking about depression also helps you have the language to what hurts, to what you feel, right? But if we don't have that language, then it then gets to not we suffer in silence, one because nobody wants to listen. And then we also suffer in silence because we don't have the words to even begin to express what it is. And that's where talking about depression, especially in that professional space, right? And if not in that professional space, please with somebody that is willing to understand and be that help, right?
Mhm.
To be able to get that language, get what's out, because if we don't, it's going to continue to weigh us down. So we have to talk about it.
Mhm. Sean, I know that you know that that's a totally it's a myth because you believe in therapy and you try to encourage other people to do it. And another part of those myths are that real men don't ask for help, period. And one of the things that and Sean, you talked about your journey of discovering you were depressed. And one thing I think is interesting for especially people of color, but especially men, I want to say that a lot of trauma and mental health issues are normalized. And because especially within the Black community, duress has happened for so long and stressful situations and trauma, it's actually been normalized that I often think that some people don't even realize that they're depressed or that they have trauma because it's been so ingrained in the community that, well, you got to push through it. You got to suck it up. This is what we do. When someone was to look at you, Sean, if they were to say, look, real men don't ask for help, I got to figure this out on my own, what would you say to that?
Well, what I would say to that is I disagree. Real men do ask for help. They may ask it in a form where they don't literally ask. I'm a person that believes in action because it's one thing for a real guy or a real man or just a man, period, to say, I need help. I need help. You can say that until the cows come home, but it's the action that really matters the most in terms of actually going to seek a therapist in real time. So going back to the manosphere for a moment and just podcasts in general, people use those platforms as a way of therapy. And it became so oversaturated with public figures and people and influencers to go on these platforms because a lot of them, they may go see a therapist, but they're not putting in the work. But they go on a podcast, they go on a show or a TV show to release all this stuff out to show people how very vulnerable they are. But in terms of actually going to seek therapy and going to see a therapist, it's a whole different thing because it's closed doors. It's not put out there for public consumption. It's happened behind closed doors because now you're unveiling the real you to a person who is more professional, more licensed than a person on a podcast. And so I think that when people go seek therapy, they just do it because somebody told them to do it, or they just do it just for a show, or people just do it just to say, well, hey, nobody can never say that I went to go therapy and I did, and the therapist talked to me or blah, 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 and it didn't work. Well, maybe because you didn't think outside of the box to go in and to just like what Joe said, therapists are not meant to fix things. They are there to listen to you, to hold you accountable, and to help you unpack those things that you may not be able to unpack to a family member or to a friend. And something that my friend Lightworker Wayne said to me once upon a time, he actually put a post out on his social media page, and he said that going to the gym, going to listen to music, or going on a podcast is not therapy. It's therapeutic, but it's
Right.
not therapy. And I
Right.
think a lot of people think, especially real men out there, they think that,
Hmm.
going to the gym and doing this, working out and everything, that's my form of therapy. Absolutely
Hmm.
not. Because
Hmm.
you can go to the gym and work
Hmm.
out, and then you can come in contact with a person. You may be having a bad day or whatever, and you interact with that person. That person says something that might be triggering to you, and you ready to beat that person up. But
Hmm.
it's because you didn't hold yourself accountable to going to seek therapy or going to a therapist and having that person hold you accountable and how you channel your anger and how you interact with other people. Because a lot of people take their aggression on other people based
Yep.
off of whatever that person said to them, or
Hmm.
because they are a product of their own environment. And
Hmm.
in the environment like I grew up in, whether you, Maya, or whether you,
Hmm.
Joe, grew up in an environment where there's a lot of microaggression
Hmm.
around people and stuff, and you bring that microaggression to you internally because of your environment and how you grew up, and now you outside of that environment to someone that didn't come from your world, and you take that microaggression out on other people and stuff, and you never know how they're going to react to. So I say real men always put it, I say to me, real men put it in the action. That's what a real man is. Put it in the action behind your words. Because like I said, you can tell somebody or ask for help and it can sound good to a person, but you really got to put in the work. You got to put in the action to make it happen.
All right. I think we did a good, we could talk forever. Like I said, this conversation is not done in one episode, but to put it out there, it's Men's Mental Health Month. That's what June is. And fellas, this is a time to step up and realize whether you want to look at, talking to a therapist as you get an accountability partner like you do with a fitness trainer, or just like you go to a financial planner to help you figure out your future. Therapists do the same thing. We help you figure out your life. We're not there to fix anything. I always tell people, I am merely just here to help you navigate this journey that you're on. You're driving and I'm holding the map. That's what we're doing. And we're figuring out this journey as we go. But there's a misunderstanding. So each of you have created spaces, because this show literally is about creating those spaces that people can have. So Joe, let's start with you. Talk to listeners about why you created, Black Men, embracing their feelings and what you do. Tell our listeners more about the spaces that you now have created for Black men.
I appreciate it. And simply within the name, Black men embracing feelings is because we run away from our feelings, right? We have difficulty being vulnerable. So this space of Black men embracing feelings, you can find me on Instagram at Black men embracing feelings, a website, blackmenembracingfeelings.com. Just creating those spaces, creating that content to help us have that safe space to talk about what we're experiencing, things such as this that we just discussed on this podcast episode today. Then I'll also have, starting on July 7th, is men's check-ins, Black Men Embracing Feelings men's check-ins, and that'll be held bi-weekly. And the first session that we'll have is simply on the question of, why is it difficult for Black men to feel seen? Right? It's hard for us to feel seen. We don't feel like people see us. They see the performance version of us, but they don't really see us. They don't really get a chance to understand how we're really feeling, what we're really thinking, and even really being there in those spaces that we feel afraid. Right? It's hard for us to say that we feel afraid because of the criticisms that may come with it. So Black Men Embracing Feelings is simply that, right? That psychoeducational support space for Black men to be able to better understand themselves so that we can be the best men that we're striving to be, not only just for ourselves, but for our family, our children, our community. Um, and the last thing I'll mention to that, I also have a workbook, a reflection workbook out there that's called The Man That I'm Becoming, or The Man That You're Becoming. And essentially, that's broken down into three sections where we start with the man that you are right now. And as mentioned before, you have to focus on where you are right now, and be honest with that man. If we're not honest, we can't go forward. And then we do focus on the man that you were, because there's a lot of past traumas or past hurts, right, that we've experienced that holds us back. And then lastly, looking at those two versions of ourselves, then we can start to work on who it is that we're becoming, because who we're becoming, we're showing up full version of ourselves. So that's the work that I'm trying to do, striving to do for us, because we need each other. Right?
There
We
you
need
go.
each
And
other.
you're very well rounded and comprehensive. Like he mentioned, all the resources. Here's a snapshot of the website. Black Men Embracing Their Feelings. So there's a podcast that Joe has. He talks about workshops, support groups, and the workbook. All this is on the site. So make sure you connect on Instagram. It's pretty much straightforward. Black Men Embracing Feelings, straightforward, as well as the same handle for the website. So many resources. And Joe, I'm going to say this. For that person who's apprehensive, and by the way, I try to be very well-rounded. In the corner up there, you can scan that QR code and get right to Joe real quick. There you go. So you can't tell me you couldn't find Joe, because I created a million ways to find Joe today. But with that being said, though, I want to say, for those that are afraid to take that leap of faith and go into therapy, I get it, because it is odd when you have to sit in front of a person that you do not know and say some things you do not want to say. But at the end, what you will find with your therapist is that space and that relationship, because you do develop a relationship with that person, that people will reach out like, okay, I haven't seen you like in 3 months. I need to come in. I have some things I need to talk about. You will find solace in that person, because they become the space that you can say what you need to say, and they're going to be honest and transparent. And it's a relationship that's hard to have with family and friends, because often we can say to a client what your family and friends can't say to you. Seriously. So Joe, you've created all those spaces. That's a good place to start if people are afraid. Check out a
Yeah.
support group. Sit in, listen, do the workbook, start the light work. That workbook you have might be the thing that leads somebody to doing therapy. They're going to say, I need to do a deeper dive into this. I've had an epiphany about me. So start there. Sean, just like Joe, you are very front and center and providing opportunities for people to grow as a mental health advocate. Tell people what you are doing to help them also to start that mental health journey.
Sure. So I'm always ongoing with my mental health advocacy. I have a YouTube channel called the Mental Space Network, which is another offspring from the Mental Space. And it carries shows including Therapy Ain't No Joke, as well as what you see here, Maya Kai's show. And I told people a couple of years back when I was on a retreat in St. Simon's, Jekyll Island, down in Georgia near Savannah, is that I am going to start a 24-hour, 7 days a week channel dedicated to mental health based programming. And so fast forward to now, that's what I did. And that's what I mean by putting in the action and putting in the work and speaking things into existence to where I am able to start a YouTube channel for shows like that. And it's the Mental Space Network on YouTube. It's easy to find. We do need more viewership, of course, because we have great programming. And I will be able to, in the near future, post different videos all the way from shows that are archived from the mental space when it was on WAOK 1380 AM, and they are going to be posted on the Mental Space Network and on other places as well. And we also have the Honey Channel available on Roku TV and on Amazon Fire TV, to where people can access the on-demand videos of past archive shows of the mental space and Therapy Ain't No Joke, that I do sometimes with Rasta. So we're going to have all that on the channel very soon. Again, it's the Honey app that you can download to your Roku TV and Amazon Fire TV. But in the meantime, between time, we have the Mental Space Network available on our YouTube channel. But let me also say this before we get ready to conclude. Men, please, I urge everybody, including Black men in our community, to go seek a therapist. This month, as Maya kept reiterating, it is Men's Health Month, but as well as Men's Mental Health Month. And I'm going to be very transparent and honest with your listeners, Maya. I'm very disappointed that June, with all the different things that we are celebrating in June, this is not a good month for Men's Mental Health Month and Men's Health Month. We have had 3 public figures this month arrested and charged for different things during the month where we as Black men should be embracing and supporting and advocating Men's Mental Health Month. And just to be specific on who those people are, I'm talking about basketball player Carmelo Anthony, comedian actor Faison Love, and media personality, radio personality that me and Maya know, Big Ticker. We've all seen the 3 mug shots that's been floating over the internet over the past couple of weeks in the month of June. And I'm very disappointed that the media would highlight these 3 influencers where we as Black men need to be advocating and need to be raising awareness on mental health. And so that's why I say that us as men, we need to check in. We need to check in with each other. If we have male friends, call them up and say, hey, how you doing? Do we need to go to a male support group, or do we need to create one? Do we need to take you somewhere and just talk or whatever? We got to check in with each other on a frequent basis. Yes. So I want to be very transparent and honest with that. Besides all the other things that I do, of course, people have seen the information where they can go to for my content and everything. I wanted to just focus more so on the therapy mental space thing, because I think that's just as important as other things that I got going on from the media, TV, radio level. And I just want people to understand that folks like Maya and Joe are doing a great job in the community to raise the awareness and to help people with their mental health And it's all about taking care of your mental. It all starts in the mental. People say that 90% of everything we do in life starts with the mental, 10% is physical. So we definitely need that mental check-in.
There you go. Right there at the top, you can scan that QR code. It's going to take you right to the Mental Space Network. Again, there's no reason why you can't start getting connected, watching what's there, because it's all right there. And like I said, I do like that NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Health Illness, it's not weak to speak. And that's what they've coined for men during the month. And I think it's important to say there is power. It takes more courage to step forward and say that you are suffering than to sit back in silence and to let it break you apart. And before we go, I want to give a couple things. I'm big on resources. So you obviously have what Joe and what Sean does. The other thing too is that Black Men's Health, which is a magazine, they actually have a site that if you're looking for a Black male therapist, they have a listing, an article there. So, and I will drop these in the chats too, so people can go back and click on these links as well. So Black Mental Health, which is actually Men's Health, which is a men's magazine. If you go to their website, there's an article that talks about 8 different sites that you can find Black male therapists. And by the way, fellas, if you want a Black male therapist, you should not feel upset or mad. That's your preference. If you feel more comfortable talking to men, you do that too. The next thing I want to bring up is a lot of people maybe don't have insurance. And I don't want you to feel like you can't seek help because you don't have insurance, because believe it or not, there is a lot of different resources. So Open Path is actually a resource that exists with therapists. You go on it, you can search it, and it's based on between $30 to $70 is what you would pay for a therapy session. And you talk to the therapist that you choose, because you get to read everyone's profile. And you meet and you do a consult with that therapist. You tell them what they can afford. I want to say the $30 is you would work with an intern, which is fine. Some people are okay. Some people are like, no, I don't want the novice helping me kind of figure out my life. But if not, it goes, but you might have a therapist that could see you potentially for $30. It makes therapy affordable. So don't let not having insurance be a reason that you don't. Check out openpathcollective.org and see if you can find someone on there that you feel really matches what you're looking for in a therapist, because that part's important. So I like to make sure that I give people resources. Listeners have been very, very positive. We had a female who chimed in, said she loves this conversation. She felt that it was very much needed. I agree. And we definitely need a lot more of it. It can't end here. For sure. And Sean, you mentioned something, and how dare I'm totally slipping that I didn't mention to talk about that. If for some reason you get to that space and you start having negative thoughts, there is 988. That is a universal number, the suicide hotline. You just can text it, you can put it in your phone. It's going to take you to someone to talk to as well. I know I talked about those numbers, and I hope those numbers made everybody kind of cringe. And if they didn't, I'm worried, because unfortunately we hear more about Black men and Black male violence on, Black on Black crime, then we hear about the fact that many Black men are taking their lives. Suicide is the second largest reason that Black men's life expire, with men between, 15 to 34. That's a big number, fellas. That's a big number, that someone feels there's no option. So there's lots of resources out there. Please don't feel like you can't get out there. 988 is a suicide and mental health crisis lifeline. These are enough resources that you can start your journey. And here's what you don't worry about: what somebody else thinks about how you feel. So Joe and Sean, I want to thank you guys so much for coming on the show, because this is a very difficult conversation. And I'll be honest, I don't think we are supposed to stop here, but we had to start somewhere, because I believe, yes, men should talk to men. And then I think we need to convene and talk collectively together, men and women. And that's how I believe that we improve the situation for Black and brown people in this country. Because right now, we're under a lot of duress. We're under a lot of duress right now. And I think people don't realize that if you think that seeing things like DEI be pulled away and being told as a woman that you shouldn't be in a position of this, and just it's a lot of narratives happening that are very hurtful, very hurtful right now. And a lot of people are struggling. You don't have to suffer in silence. Go find you a therapist. Any closing thoughts from the two of you before I let you go?
No, I think everything that's been said here. Thank you, Maya, for this space, for this platform, and all that you do. And of course with you as well, Sean. First time meeting you. I can already tell that you're a great person. You're doing great work. Just stay encouraged with what you're doing as well. And for those listening, again, it's important to talk. There's nothing wrong with talking, right? Like that's the first step. And I do want to highlight what Sean said as well. But we have to do the work. right? And the last thought I will leave is, hold yourself accountable, right? But don't criticize. There's two different things.
Mhm.
Criticisms come with the shame, and the resentments and all of those things that press us down, right? But hold yourself accountable. If you know better, do better, and give yourself grace in that, and it's okay. And now just go ahead and do it. And it can be that simple. Just go ahead and do it, but don't criticize yourself in it, because it's going to be even harder to get out of it and get through it. So be blessed. I appreciate the space. Yeah, humble to it and grateful for it.
John, any parting thoughts for the listeners?
Yeah, thank you, Maya, for putting together this platform and allowing myself and the brother Joe to really talk truth to so many people and to let people know how paramount it is to go seek a therapist. I appreciate the people in the comment section for commenting. And I want to also say this too. Don't let anything stop you, prevent you from going to see a therapist. We hear a lot of people, especially in our community, say, well, it costs too much to go seek a therapist, or I'm just going to let God handle it. We just going to let God
Mhm,
handle it, and then we're going to go from
mhm,
there. But even God gave you a brain. So
mhm,
you got to be able to, and we keep stressing it, you got to put the work in. You got
mhm,
to put the work in to go be a better version of yourself. And that's what it's all about. It's about being a better version of yourself, so you know how to move and to carry yourself when you go into different rooms, different environments, and also have better relationships with other people. I would say this as part of my closing remark, that a lot of the things that I've been through as a Black man in America, whether it's on a professional level, whether it's on a personal level, has made me more of a better version of myself. I would say that would be the takeaway from what I experienced and what I went through in my 42 years of being on this planet. And it's all about being a better version of yourself, because it just helps you get to a level of maturity and growth.
mhm,
And so I'm thankful for some of the things that I've been through and what have you, and to not have given up on myself when I had those suicidal thoughts 6 years
mhm,
ago. Because if
mhm.
I were to go through what I went through at that point in time, I wouldn't be able to speak to Maya. I would have not met Maya. Would
Right,
have not
right.
met the brother
Mhm.
Joe. I
Mhm,
would be no longer here and not making an impact the way that I'm doing, along with the two of you all are doing. So don't let anything get in the way or stop you from doing what you need to do to be a vessel in your community. And that's my closing remark.
Well, thank you both. Until next time, I appreciate your time. And again, hopefully, you're going to see an influx of people who are starting their mental wellness journey with you. I appreciate you both. A show, everybody, and I enjoyed every single moment of it. But until next time, as you know, I always say, thank you for listening to this episode. As I said, the whole purpose of my podcast is to help people to be able to identify their ambitions and harness that motivation to help you to acquire the satisfaction you are seeking in your everyday life. So never fear if you missed this episode or any of the episodes, you can always find Maya, My Ambition, Your Ambition on pretty much every podcast platform there is. You can find me iTunes, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon Audibles. Ooh, and guess what? You can find me on Honey with Sean. I'm all over the place. So you can find me that. You can always listen to episodes of my show always on my website, maya-speaks.com. All things Maya are there. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's easy too. And I finally got my act together in 2026. So all of my social media handles are the same. So whether it's YouTube, Instagram, or X, you can find me at Maya Speaks to You. And that's all things Maya is there. So I've definitely learned to make this a lot easier for people to connect with me. And remember, on my website, I have a couple things that I really am passionate about. I have my menopause blog. So ladies, if you're in a struggle with that transitional change in life that can turn your life upside down, you are also being inundated with a lot of information that I'm going to tell you is not always going to apply to you. I'm about educating. So you can find my Me on Pause menopause blog that will share lots of good information. And I have a weekly inspirational piece I give to people to process a thought. As you're working on that best version of you, it's about how are you proceeding? How do you think about things? So I have a blog that does that as well. So as I like to say to people, until next time, remember your present becomes your past and your future is no more. So live every single day to the fullest, because what we don't know is if there is a tomorrow. Until next time, everyone, stay safe
Whether you're on the go or listening on your cell phone, tablet, or laptop, you can find the show in the iTunes, Google, and iHeartRadio platforms.
With all due respect, I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Just search Maya, My Ambition, Your Ambition, and get ready to be inspired and motivated to harness your ambition.